12-year-old Eli Dawson had known. Hunger long enough that it no longer scared him. It simply lived inside him, like a quiet shadow. The frontier town of Red Valley was lively in the evenings, filled with the smell of fresh bread from the baker's shop, stew simmering at the tavern, and the low whistle of harmonicas drifting between wooden porches. But Eli, wearing a torn shirt, patched trousers and boots held together by twine, stood outside the tavern door clutching a single silver coin, the very last one he had managed to earn after 2 days of splitting fence posts for a rancher, who paid him almost nothing. He had planned to buy himself a small bowl of stew and a piece of cornbread, maybe even share half with his little sister if he could sneak it home without anyone seeing him. But just as he was stepping toward the counter, he saw them, an old couple sitting at a corner table, their hands trembling, the man's beard white as frost, the woman's shoulders frail, both staring at an empty tin cup as if hoping it might magically fill itself. Eli heard them whisper that they hadn't eaten since yesterday, that their journey back to their cabin had drained their strength, that they had no money left because their mule had died on the trail. The boy froze. Hunger clawed at his own stomach, his mouth dry, his thoughts clouded by the smell of warm food. But something deeper stirred inside him, the memory of his mother, who used to say, "Eli, a good heart is worth more than a full belly." Without thinking twice, Eli walked up to the barkeep, placed his last coin on the counter, pointed toward the old couple and said, "Please give them whatever this buys." The barkeep blinked. "Son, you sure? You'd look like you need this more than they do." Eli only nodded, swallowing his own hunger, and stepped outside before the old couple could see who had helped them. He leaned against a post, weak and dizzy, but there was a strange warmth inside him, like courage had replaced the emptiness. Night settled over Red Valley, cold and sharp. Eli's stomach cramped, and his legs shook as he walked toward the abandoned barn where he slept. He curled up in the hay, shivering, listening to the wind scrape against the boards. Hours passed. The world fell silent. And then, just before dawn, a deep sound rumbled outside, hoofbeats, heavy, confident, not the kind belonging to weary travelers, but those of a man who carried authority. Then came a knock on the barn door, firm and deliberate. Eli sat up. The door slid open, letting in a sliver of pale morning. A tall figure stepped inside, a man in a long coat, boots polished, belt buckles shining like a sun. Eli recognized him instantly. Asher Blackwood, the richest rancher in the entire valley, a man whose empire stretched over miles of pasture and cattle. A legend whispered about more than seen. Asher crossed his arms and stared at Eli with a gaze sharp enough to cut through darkness. "Boy," he said slowly, "the old couple told me what you did last night." Eli blinked, confused embarrassment burning in his cheeks. "I didn't do nothing worth mentioning." "Sir!" The rancher stepped closer, his boots thudding like the heartbeat of the earth. "You gave your last coin for someone else's dinner," he said. "Most grown men wouldn't do half of what you did." Eli lowered his head. They needed it more. Asher studied the boy for a long moment, and then a deep, gentle smile formed beneath his mustache. "Get up, son." Dawn came with a reward for a heart like yours, and in that instant, Eli sensed his life was about to change in a way he could never have imagined. Eli followed Asher, Blackwood out of the barn into the cool breath of dawn, the sky washed in shades of pink and gold, as if the heavens themselves were beginning a new chapter. The rancher signaled to his men, 3 seasoned cowboys, mounted on strong horses, who parted. The morning fog, like guardians of some long-awaited destiny. Without explanation, Asher lifted Eli up onto his own saddle and rode toward the eastern hills, where the Blackwood Ranch stretched like a kingdom carved from wild frontier land. When they reached the ranch, Eli's eyes widened. He had never seen anything so grand. Towering barns, endless fields of grazing cattle, strong horses, windmills creaking, smoke rising from chimneys, and workers bustling with purpose. Asher dismounted and placed a firm hand on Eli's shoulder. "This ranch was built by hard work," he said, "but it survives because of loyalty, kindness, and good hearts. Qualities I see in you." Eli felt his chest tighten. "Sir, I ain't looking for charity," Asher chuckled. "Good, because I'm not offering any." He called out to his men. "This boy has a job here now. Food, clothes, a bed, and fair pay. And if he works as hard as he gives, he'll go farther than any of us." The cowboys nodded in respect. Eli stared at the rancher, speechless. "But why me?" he whispered. Asher leaned closer. "Because, son, rich men like me can build fences and barns. But brave hearts like yours build the future of this valley." From that day on, Eli became a force of nature. He worked from sunrise to nightfall, feeding cattle, fixing fences, gathering hay, learning to ride faster, rope tighter, and lead stronger. The ranch hands admired him, the horses trusted him, and even the foreman shook his head in amazement at how determined the small boy was. Every night, Eli ate warm meals, slept in a real bed, and slowly grew into the kind of young man people noticed, not because of strength, but because of character. Months passed. Seasons changed, and on the anniversary of the day he had given his last coin, Asher called the entire ranch together. When Eli stood before them, taller, stronger, and steadier, Asher placed a hand on his shoulder again and declared, "This young man reminded us all what true wealth is. Not land, not cattle, but the courage to help someone who has nothing to offer." In return, the ranch erupted in applause. Eli's eyes glittered, not with pride but with gratitude. The boy who once slept hungry in abandoned barns now stood as one of the most respected young ranchers in Red Valley. And though he had gained a future many could only dream of, he never forgot the truth. One small act of kindness, even from a hungry heart, can open doors that lead all the way to destiny. And as the sun set behind the hills, Eli whispered a message to anyone who might one day hear his story. If you believe in kindness, your life will change in ways you can't imagine. And viewers, if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps bring more powerful tales to life.